We are literally hunted every day, every time we step foot outside the comfort of our homes. We can't even go for a damn jog. Like, what, man? Are you kidding me? No, man. Are you kidding me? Those are the words of basketball superstar LeBron James, whose reaction to the lynching and murder of Georgia resident Ahmaud Arbery was not unlike many other African Americans, as it has grown ever so clear that law enforcement and America's justice system has failed Black people since the beginning of time. Today, we have a very special guest to talk about the Ahmaud Arbery case. None other than the civil rights leader himself, the renowned civil rights attorney, Benjamin Crump. And we also have Dr. Nasinga Burton with us. And Nasinga actually was among the first reporters who brought this story to light. In fact, it was Nasinga's story a couple of months ago who really highlighted this case. And of course, we know that it went dormant for a couple of months until that video. And Attorney Crump, you had retweeted something really I thought was profound about this. You said that an arrest was made. They made the arrest not because they saw the video. They made the arrest because we saw the video. Attorney Crump, thanks for joining us. Talk to us about Mr. Arbery, and of course, you represent his dad.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Brown, for having me, and Dr. Burton, thank you for your work in helping break this story. It's so important that stories about our people and our community and our children, how they are taking them away from us, that the story gets out. And oftentimes, Mr. Brown, mainstream media won't get on the case until it blows up per se. But if it wasn't for people like Dr. Burton and Ahmaud's family fighting just to give it some life, that, hey, they shot him in broad daylight, all he was doing was jogging, nobody would have knew about this case. Nobody would have cared about another young Black child taken away far too soon or unnecessarily and unjustifiably. And it keeps happening over and over. And so when I think about the fact that 74 days later, we got an arrest finally, I absolutely want it to be clear for the record. It wasn't because they saw the video. It was absolutely because we, the people, saw the video. And when we saw that video, we became enraged. And when we got enraged, we had a public outcry that could not be contained. I mean, it was not just the civil rights activists and the Black Lives Matter activists. It was the clergy. It was the college students. It was the celebrities. It was the athletes. It was people of goodwill and moral people who saw that video and said, my God, we just witnessed a lynching in 2020, not 1920, but 2020. And they let the murderous duo, the leaders of the lynch mob, go home and sleep in their beds at night in peace, while Ahmaud Arbery's family had no peace and nobody fighting for them. So this is what this struggle is about. We all got to come together to fight for justice.
Yeah, and Dr. Nasinga Burton, it's always a pleasure to talk with you. Talk to us about 2 months ago. You came across this story. Walk us through it.
Yeah, you know, as is the case, as you know, Stacy, because we do this all day, every day. Sometimes you get tips, sometimes you get leads, sometimes you hear people talking. And a friend of mine who's also a journalist was talking about this case that had happened and it wasn't getting any play. And so I really couldn't believe it. I said he was doing what he was jogging, like, you know, because we've been through the breathing, we've been through the meeting in a park, we've been through playing loud music. Jordan Davis, Lucy McBath is actually congressional representative here in Georgia, his mother. So we've been through all of these things, Trayvon Martin, of course. And so it's like, you know, what happened? I need to know. I didn't have enough information. It was just that, you know, this young man got killed and nobody was talking about it. That was what I heard. So then I started digging. Some other things that I heard was that, he was killed because he was falsely suspected, or he was suspected of having been involved in some break-ins in the neighborhood. So then, of course, I went to the online crime reports, and then I checked the local paper and looked at their their Metro report, and I didn't see any car break-ins except for one in December, and it wasn't in that neighborhood. So I knew then that something wasn't correct, something wasn't happening. And so then I just started digging and digging and digging, and I made it a point to not editorialize, because I get paid to be an editorial. I do a lot of opinion writing, but I was like, I need to, put on my reporter's hat and get the facts of this case, and just that's all I did. In my blog post on the Burton Wire, which is my company, I put it, just the details, the facts. This is what happened to this young man, and left it. And once it went out, all the social media networks, and then it went viral, and then people really started talking about it. And this is just a young man. He's a health nut, fitness. Black people always talk about Black people, especially with COVID, about how we don't take care of ourselves, right? So he's taking care of himself. He's a former athlete. He runs, for his mind, like a lot of people, serotonin, to get rid of that and to have everything kick in. So he's into fitness, and he's running through his neighborhood. And these men leave their home. They left their home, the McMichaels, father and a son. Father is a former police officer. He was a police officer for 7 years, and then he was an investigator for the district attorney's office there. They leave their car, and a third friend, someone called Robbie. I can't remember his last name right now. That's his nickname. Yes, Brian, right. And so they leave, they grab their guns, a shotgun and a 357. A 357 and a shotgun. And this young man, Arbery, Ahmaud, is running. He's jogging. So they can't catch him. I mean, you've seen their pictures. They were never going to catch him on foot, right? They get into this truck to go after this young man. And this is what just disturbed me the most about this case. You grab your guns, you jump into this truck, you have your friend videotape it, right? And they follow this young man. They corner him one time. He turns around and runs in reverse and runs past them. That is someone who's running away from you, right? They don't call the police. So when he turns and he runs in the opposite direction, which is a signal, a universal signal that, oh, I don't want any problems. I'm running in the opposite direction. I'm running away from you. They follow him again, and then they corner him again. When they corner him again, he tries to go around them again. He tries to reverse again. They throw open the car door. I couldn't tell who it was. I think it was the son who threw open the car door and block his exit. So he is trying his best to get away from these folks. And then he goes around the front of the truck, and you've seen the rest of the video. And so we basically have a young man who's out taking care of his business, minding his business, doing what people do every day, just like Trayvon Martin was doing every single day. You walk to the store, you run, you jog, what have you. And then he's taken out by these people who not only kill him, but then lie on him about why they killed him. Well, that is in Black America.
And for those who may not know, Attorney Crump is first of all, he's one of the best attorneys in the world, but he also represented the family of Trayvon Martin and so many others. Attorney Crump, I understand that it's reported that two defenses that the man and his son is going to try to use. One is they were making a citizen's arrest, and two, stand your ground. Now, so people can understand this, and you obviously can speak to this better than I, but number one, with a citizen's arrest, I understand you cannot use any type of force for a citizen's arrest, and for stand your ground, you can't initiate the confrontation.
Absolutely, Stacy. And before I answer those questions, I want to tell Dr. Burton, the William Rowdy Bryan, he is a legend that he did not have anything to do with it. He just happened to see them running, and he is his lawyer and is a legend that he just wanted to get a picture of Ahmaud because he thought something criminal was happening, and if he got away, he wanted to be able to show a picture of Ahmaud, which is just asinine on every level, because first he's assuming that the Black young man did something criminal, and then second, in the police report, Matt Michaels and them say that they had Rowdy cut him off. And so they're trying to lie, but it's not adding up apparently. And so I just want you all to know, because you are the journalists who hold them accountable before we can get it in a court of law, in the court of public opinion, that they're trying to spin it. They're trying to change their stories and their narratives over and over again so they can try to justify the unjustifiable. And, you know, when the police came out there, the big reason we're asking the Georgia Bureau of Investigations and the Attorney General to investigate the entire investigation from beginning to end, because it is incomprehensible that they would not arrest them that day on site when you have this young man unarmed on the ground, and they tried to allege that he was a burglar. However, he has no burglary bag, he has no burglary tools, he has no burglary mask, he has t-shirt, shorts, and jogging shoes, and nothing else, Mr. Brown. And then you think about the fact, as Dr. Burton pointed out very importantly, that there were no burglaries in this Scintilla Chores neighborhood. I mean, when you looked at the records, nobody was complaining about burglary or anything like that. So they made an imagination of a crime so they could try to justify killing this young black man in broad daylight. So you look at that, but then you also got to say either the police were, one, incompetent, or even more heinous, it was intentional what they did by not arresting the killers, because they had this relationship with McMichaels, who had been a former police officer and a detective for the DA for 30 years or so. So they all knew one another. They just had no relationship with this young black boy who was dead on the ground, Ahmaud Arbery. And that's the first thing. The second thing is more heinous, because it's just, he was white, they were white, and he was black, and they wanted to believe whatever the white people said, as often is the case, whether it's Trayvon Martin or any number of our children who have been killed by these self-appointed vigilantes taking the law into their own hand. So I just wanted to say that first to update y'all on what's going on. And we're talking to Joyette Holmes, the prosecutor, the DA from Cobb County, who the Attorney General has just appointed to the case, to make sure that she puts all of this in context. We don't want her to use anything from that Glenn County law enforcement, any reports or anything like that, because we don't think you can trust them when you look at what Jackie Johnson allegedly did. That's the DA in Glenn County who told the police allegedly not to file charges, even though the police said they want to file charges. And now Jackie Johnson has come back and said that's false. She didn't tell them not to file charges. So they're pointing the fingers at one another. Everybody's trying to cover themselves now that the world is looking at this thing. And then Barnhill, the second DA on the case, you know, he's the guy who also had a conflict of interest, but then he writes this memo saying, based on everything he reviewed and everything he saw, including the video, he said there is no evidence of a crime or even probable cause to make an arrest. And so by writing that memo, what he essentially is doing is putting his thumb on the scales of justice in favor of this murderous duo, Travis McMichael and Gregory McMichael, even though he has said, I got a conflict of interest. Once you say that, you violate the canon of ethics if you say anything further, because you have a conflict of interest. But he didn't do that. And so that's why we need this whole thing investigated, and, you know, then get to your questions and repeat your question again, Stacy. I went on.
No, that's okay. That's some great information. The questions were really the two defenses that we are hearing: stand your ground and also making a citizen's arrest. In addition to that, before you get to that, Attorney Crump, one of our viewers, Jordan Miller, is asking, when did the police obtain the video?
Yeah, according to the third person, I believe he's an accomplice, but he's saying he's not. He said he showed them that day.
February 23rd.
Yeah.
February 23rd.
2020. They knew it from day one. So they absolutely had it. The citizen's arrest, you keep everything in context. There's this 911 tape out there. The operator asked them twice on the 911 tape. She said, what crime is he committing? What did he do? That both times she asked that, they said nothing. Part of this whole citizen's arrest statute, which I totally think is just a terrible law for Black people, is it tells citizens who have no training, no counter de-escalation skills, anything, that you can go try to detain somebody if you see them in the commission of a crime. They got to actually visually see it happening. That's number one. Or somebody is in harm's way. Somebody, is having violence against them. And then they say you can make a citizen's arrest, but you can't use any deadly force or anything, but you can attempt to detain them, is this asinine law that they have out there. So even under a liberal interpretation of that law, they didn't see Ahmaud commit any crime. They didn't see him do anything wrong. Even if you talk about him going into this house that was under construction, he didn't commit a crime by going there. I mean, it's like, what crime did he commit for you all to justify this other than you profiled him because of his skin color, which is really what this is about, as we all know. And then as the stand your ground argument, and we know it's coming a mile away, and obviously they're raising a lot of money, just like they did for Trayvon's killer and Michael Brown's killer. So we have to really be focused on the prize, keeping our eyes on the prize and not being distracted by this character assassination and everything. But the psychologist tells us when you're in fear, you're in harm's way. And remember, he's running from white men, one on the back of a pickup truck with a shotgun and a .357 Magnum, yelling God knows who what to him. He doesn't know these people from Adam. You got to imagine he is in fear of his life. And so they say it's flight or fight. And obviously he was taking flight. As the doctor said, he was running. He was trying to get away. And then when they ambushed him with the other car and he couldn't get away after he had tried unsuccessfully to go in another direction, then he literally was fighting for his life. And we see that on the video. And that shotgun, looks like a single pump shotgun where you have to pump it and then shoot, and then you have to pump it again. So it's very deliberate acts that they're doing. And our ballistics expert informs us, and this is pretty graphic. He says one of the worst ways you can be killed is with a shotgun because of the power of a shotgun. It's one of the most powerful weapons out there. It's the type of weapon they use to put an elephant down if they escape the zoo. Mm-hmm. And so, Mr. Brown, when you think about it, quite literally, Dr. Duncan, when you think about it, it goes in like a $50. They say that's the one, like a gun, Dr. Burton. They say you shoot it and then one projectile come out. A shotgun, when you shoot it, several projectiles come out at one time. And so, and you see how close range he was. And he said, the expert says it's like a $50, the entry wound. But then it expands, it explodes. And so it has such velocity that you rarely survive a shotgun wound if you shot with that kind of firepower. And so the tragedy And the graphic tragedy is this here. He says it will go in your entrance wound like $50, but when it exits, it can be as large as a teacup saucer. And so when we see Ahmaud running away, you see that blood on his back just spread. And that is the exit wound, because with a shotgun wound, it's going to exit the body. It's not going to stay in because it's of too much force and velocity, not like a regular gun. And so you actually see what he's telling us, that on his back, as he takes those couple of steps and run, and you see that big kind of red circle come there, that is that shotgun wound. And all his organs have been pushed back. And that's why you hardly ever survive a shotgun wound, because it's several projectiles. And so it hits multiple things when it go in you.
So, Dr. Burden, and again, for those who may not know, Dr. Nasinga Burden is one of the first to have broke this story, and she does such a tremendous job. She got a doctor in front of her name and journalist at the back of her name. But can you talk a little bit about, and I know you probably have looked at this case at probably as much as Attorney Crump himself, who was involved. Talk to us about the neighborhood. What is it like there in that, was it Brunswick neighborhood of Georgia?
So, Brunswick, Georgia is in the southeastern portion of Georgia. It's about halfway between Savannah, Georgia, and Jacksonville, Florida. So it is near the coast. And as I understand it, I have been to Brunswick, Georgia one time in my life. But as I understand it, area that he was running in, it was a residential neighborhood. It's a residential neighborhood. They have a lot of new construction, like most neighborhoods do now, particularly in places that have that are desirable locations to live. And there are the idea that you can't, and this is the other piece of this, these neighborhoods that they live next to, right? Black neighborhoods in the South, especially, well, it's everywhere, but definitely in the South, Black neighborhoods are next to white neighborhoods, and you might be in the same socioeconomic level, right? So you don't have to be like, in Hollywood, you don't have to be in Compton and then go to the hills, right? You literally could be within a mile of each other. This part of Georgia, it's a mostly Black space, right? And you do have white folks there. Of course, you got the old white money. Of course, you got the working class white folks, or what have you. But this idea, and let me say this also about Brunswick, Georgia, and Jackie Johnson. All right, because there's a case, Mr. Crump, that I hope you know about from 2010. It's Carolyn Small case. Where Jackie Johnson was the DA, and Carolyn Small was a small white woman, right? Because this is a larger than, it's definitely about race, but it's also about the police culture and the judicial culture in Brunswick, Georgia. Small white woman, mother of two, who was shot six times by police officers when she was in the middle of a manic episode, all right, driving a car. And she was blocked in, and there was nowhere for her to go. Right, police car blocked her in. She's got a tree on one side. She could not go anywhere. They shot her 6 times, and Jackie Johnson covered for those police officers. And 4 DAs from neighboring counties called for the GBI to investigate, and they called for the DOJ to investigate. And Jackie Johnson again blocked those police officers. One of whom is on tape saying that, "Oh, did you see her head explode?" All right.
Wow.
So I definitely want us to talk about the neighborhood, but I also want to talk about this culture that's happening down here.
Right.
And when you think about why Black people are afraid, and why people in general, right, are afraid of the police, it's police culture. It's like Los Angeles. I used to live in LA. Everybody's afraid of police there. It's not just Black people, it's not Latinos, it's white people. Everybody's afraid because of the culture. Same thing with Brunswick, Georgia. The culture of the police, the weight that they have, the protection that they have. If you look at the mission of the police on their website, they say their loyalty is each other first. That is their mission. The loyalty is to each other first. So when we think about Ahmaud, we have to think about a brave person. He's a brave man. He's a free man, which is why they killed him. Because he lives in Brunswick, Georgia, and he still wants to be free. He wants to run. That's what people do. That's why people run. They want to be in touch with their bodies. This is where when you run, your mind and your body are working together. All right. And so my point is with this is that, regardless of where they were, regardless of where this was in Brunswick, Georgia, and they're good people in Brunswick, Georgia, let me say that too. There is a culture of fear when it comes to dealing with the police there because they are so entrenched, right? And they are covered by the district attorneys. If you look at, back in March, they just arrested 5 police officers for being involved in illegal activities with people who are in the Glenn County Jail.
Mhm.
All right, this is a corrupt police system. And Benjamin Crump, you're an attorney, you work with police officers all the time. Stacy, you're a journalist. Those of us who work in media, we're always around police officers.
Yep.
Yeah.
There are good people out there.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we have a
time when there is a corrupt system in place and somebody has to do something about it. The GBI, the DOJ has got to come down here and break up this whole system. They got to break it up. So these people can live and not get killed while jogging.
We have a question from a viewer. Sandy Henry says, what about what the police said that they wanted to arrest, but the DA said don't? Is that true? And she goes on to say, so this is on DA Johnson as well. Is that correct?
Well, and I'll let when you go first, Dr. Burton, then I'll speak.
So initially, and here's the other thing. This is how police culture works too. And this is how police culture and white supremacy work together. So the man who allegedly taped it because they wanted to justify that they were well within the law and following the law. That's why they taped it. And then it was leaked allegedly. All right. Jackie Johnson, they were told, and this is Barnhill, this is Jackie Johnson, allegedly said that there were no laws broken. Barnhill and the police station, they're saying that they wanted to press charges, but Jackie Johnson intervened and said that there was no case and that they should not press charges. Barnhill, like Attorney Crump said, had already written his statement saying that there was no need to further investigate, even though he was leaving the case due to a conflict of interest. All right, so yes, it is Jackie Johnson. And so now Jackie Johnson's office, they put out a statement, I think it was today. They put out a statement that said that no, they did not block it. They actually said that it was the police department. So Mr. Crump had already was saying that earlier. He says they're now pointing fingers at each other. But the point is, when you are in the position to even point fingers at one another, when you are in the position of where there's nobody in place other than the GBI and the DOJ, and they do exist for this very reason, when you have a corrupt system in place, when you have people who believe it is their duty to be loyal to each other as opposed to the people, the citizens that they are supposed to represent, then you have to come in and you have to do something so you can change the system at work. That is how white supremacy works. It's systemic. This is why people think they can stop and engage Black people who are minding their business. If it doesn't have anything to do with you, leave it alone. That's why we have a police force. Call them and let them handle it. It might not turn out well for us, but at least you may have a chance. You may have a chance if they follow procedure and protocol. Because in most of these cases where you have these egregious incidents happening, they're not following procedure and protocol. All right.
Yep.
So that's what we need to do with Brunswick, Georgia. We need to make it a place where people can be safe. And this is all people. And it's unfortunate that this terrible thing happened to Ahmaud. But what is going to come out of this is that they are now on the international stage and people are going to be watching and seeing what they are doing so that, when Carolyn Small was killed in 2010, and nothing happened. Now we're up to what year? 2020. If you had stopped Jackie Johnson in 2010, yep, we wouldn't be here in 2020, and Ahmaud might be here today. Yeah. So that is how racism works. That is how systemic racism works. That is how white supremacy works. When you don't stop George Zimmerman, and I know you, but I will say George Zimmerman in 2012, then you get him beating up his wife. Then you get him fighting other people. Then you get him being arrested for being aggressive and abusive because you don't stop him when he stalks and kills a teenager. So these people got to be stopped immediately in their tracks. And so that is why we have to talk about this. We have to write about this. And that is just a burden that Black journalists have to bear. It's hard. It's hard when people send you videos all the time. Stacey will tell you it's hard. You get videos all the time. You're getting tips all the time. This stuff is happening all the time, everywhere throughout this country. And that is not a broad statement. It is fact.
Yeah, and with
And
that,
we've got to do something about it. We can't be lambs. We can't be lambs led to slaughter everywhere. Oh.
Yeah, we could kill Dr. Burton, can't we?
I went off. I'm sorry.
No, hey, we get it. I'm sure Attorney Crump gets it. Attorney Crump, with that though, and we got a question from Kimberly Elizabeth Brown, who says, will the GBI investigate the relationships among the investigators, police department, and DA in Glenn County? And prior to Kimberly Brown's comment, another Washington Informer employee, Chevry Lassiter. Chevry talked about the current district attorney, not district attorney, Department of Justice under Attorney General Barr. Isn't these something to be concerned about, though, that this Department of Justice does not feel inclined to look into matters like this?
Yeah, it's awfully troublesome when you think about the Obama administration had issued consent decrees and many of these municipalities and jurisdictions where you had exactly what Dr. Burden was talking about, when you had police and DA culture so intimately woven. It was like a symbiotic relationship that they were never going to prosecute their friends and colleagues and the people who they build up their credibility every day in prosecuting Black and brown people in courtrooms every day. And so the people you relied on for all these hundreds and dozens of cases that you put people away on, now you got to attack their credibility. Because one thing, Mr. Brown, that we're starting to advocate for is every case that Gregory McMichaels investigated on behalf of the DA during his tenure may need to be reviewed. Because if he would do this to an unarmed Black man just out for a jog, what other things did he do in his career to kill? You know, I have
how many other
season legalized genocide of colored people. We talk about how the laws that are supposed to protect us, they use to kill us, and how the courts are the people who administer this. They're the executives who monitor this day in and day out and make sure that they continue to populate the prison industrial complex. And so you want to look at this relationship with all of these people. And I guess her question was about Attorney General Barr. Well, you know, traditionally, the civil rights community used to count on the Department of Justice, you know, to come to the South and try to at least give some sense of fairness and impartiality when we were dealing with the Klan or the police, and oftentimes it was one and the same. And so they used to deal with that. And when I say the South, I always digress, Stacey, as I give speeches and stuff. I use Malcolm X's definition of the South. Anything below the Canadian border. You remember Malcolm said they kill Black people in the South, and then he said, and I define the South as anything below the Canadian border, and that's what we have going on in America. And we now have no help from the federal government, as your colleague stated correctly, because the first thing that General Jefferson Beauregard Sessions did when he got into office was to remove all the consent decrees that had came under the Obama administration. So what they told police, you can go back and do business as normal when it came to brutalizing and harassing poor people of color, disenfranchised communities, marginalized communities. Have at it, because whatever you say, we're gonna stamp it and make it official when you come to the Department of Justice. So I say they didn't arrest them because they saw the video. They arrested them because we saw the video, and once we saw it, we couldn't unsee it. And we had to do something. So it was the people that made them arrest these killers finally after 10 weeks.
We are again talking with the great attorney Benjamin Crump and the wonderful Dr. Nasinga Burton. This is the National Newspaper Publishers Association. We're celebrating our 80th year this year and the 193rd year of the Black Press of America. Attorney Crump, I wanted to mention this to you, and I want Dr. Burton also to weigh in on this as well. Now, at the top of this broadcast, we talked about, I read the words of LeBron James. We have heard from Jay-Z. We've heard from T.I. We've heard from Russell Simmons. We've heard from so many on this case with Ahmaud Arbery. And you obviously have heard from these individuals in past cases, Trayvon Martin and others, Michael Brown. Is there something that we in that community in particular should be leading the charge in before something like this happens?
Yeah, there are several things we can do to be proactive. But I will tell you, with the momentum by Ahmaud, there's an opportunity to get things done in Georgia that probably was never even possible until you had Ahmaud Arbery's tragic lynching caught on videotape. Like, Georgia is one of only 4 states that don't have a hate crime law. And so, you know, this could be the impetus of finally getting that law passed in Georgia, since, you know, the racists don't want to appear as racist. So they might do it because of this here. I know my uncle used to tell me the worst thing a racist hates is to be called a racist. And so maybe Georgia might do it because they don't want to look so bad now that, as Dr. Burton said, the whole international community is looking down on Brunswick, Georgia, and the state of Georgia. So this may be the good thing to happen. And this whole citizens arrest idiotic law, this is a perfect time to repeal that, because I can only fathom how many poor people of color have been just abused by people thinking that they have the legal right to impose their will on them because they can make a citizen's arrest. Now, can you imagine if a black person actually went to a white person and said, I'm making a citizen's arrest? The response we would get.
Right. And this whole idea too of self-defense and the fact that Black people can't defend themselves when they are being stalked or targeted is something else. And just so that you know, in Georgia, there has been pending legislation to have a hate crime law put into effect, but it won't pass, or hasn't passed, because it's overbroad. And I use those in quotes, and that comes from my friend who's a prosecutor, but it's overbroad in terms of its reach. And so this is happening. This has been happening. People in Georgia have been talking about it. And I think this might be the case, unfortunately. This is a horrible case, but this might be the case to get that hate crime actually put into law. And so, we do have things that we can be doing. Also, Governor Kemp name-checked Ahmaud Arbery in his last press conference. So that means that he's top of mind, and he started the press conference with him. So that means we still need to be putting on pressure with Governor Kemp and putting pressure on his office. We need to still be putting on pressure on GBI. And just because DOJ looks like it's under disrepair doesn't mean we should not still be pressing them and making it known in regards to what's happening here in Brunswick, Georgia. And then, of course, last but not least, we have Lucy was murdered over loud music in Florida. It's one of the few cases that actually did end up with the man, I'm having a brain fart on his name, but being put into prison. And so Lucy McBath is here. She's Congressional District 6 representative, and she has been, just really stomping about the changing these gun laws and things of that nature. So there are lots of things that have to happen or that can happen, but we cannot forget people like Kendrick Johnson, who was murdered here in Georgia. We have lots of people that we can be thinking about who just have not had the justice that they deserve. And so this Ahmaud Arbery case, the fact that it is international, means we cannot let up. We cannot let apathy win. You know, I keep seeing a lot of apathetic comments on social media, like it's not gonna matter, it's not gonna make a difference. He's not, you know, there's a long, you know, my parents are lawyers, and this is why I can follow cases so closely because I grew up around it. You know, it's called strategy. That's where I get it, Mr. Crump. But it's called strategy. It's called strategy. So even if you don't win the case, you can win the hate crime law, which is going to help somebody later, right? If you can get Jackie Johnson out of office, if you can get Barnhill out of office, that will help. If we can get Barr out of office, i.e., elect a new president, we can start bringing those laws back that were overturned. All right. So there is a long game that people have got to focus on and not be so injured, because we're injured, we're hurt. Black people are hurt by this country and what happens to us and our children, and what seems to happen to us more so than other folks. But we cannot let apathy win. We've got to fight for Ahmaud and for everyone else who has literally taken these bullets so that we can continue to be here.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Attorney Trump. Crump.
I just wanted to piggyback on something I thought crucial what Dr. Burton said, and that is the long game. We cannot be short-sighted. Even though it's about Ahmaud, it's about so many other people beyond Ahmaud. And I remember the victories made in the Trayvon Martin case, despite, you know, the prosecution doing what they did in that case, or lack in many instances. In the aftermath of Trayvon Martin, the activism was so strong that we elected our first African-American state attorney in the entire state, in Aramis Ayala, a sister who is a mentee of mine and a dear friend. And she came in, and, you know, the first thing she did was say, I'm not going to impose the death penalty, because I think it's so racially disproportionately executed on race that I'm not going to do it. And so when you look at the long game, that's so important. And Michael Brown, Ferguson, aftermath of his killing, they didn't give an indictment against the killer cop, but you saw Wesley Bell, an African-American law professor who had never won public office. You know, he got elected as the district attorney. And you can imagine the changes he's making. I mean, Tamir Rice, in his case, they had a DA that had been there for 22 years, lost to a first-time, a white gentleman, but he lost on the Tamir Rice issue. So we have to use our emotions and turn the, you know, pain and the trauma into triumph. And we can do that by organizing. Right now, we got so much momentum on our side, so much emotion. We have to galvanize that, and people want to know what is the plan, whether it's the hate crime law, whether it's the citizens arrest being repealed, whether it's going after Jackie Johnson and making sure that she's not allowed another term to disenfranchise that community, whether it's Barnhill, you know, in Waycross, Georgia, that has a sizable demographic that are make up by Black people. I mean, it's all these things. This is our time to finally do things that we could never do. We just got to look at the long game and not just be ready to react all the time. This is an opportunity to be proactive.
Attorney Crump, one of the things that I think we'd be remiss if I didn't ask you is, how is Ahmaud Arbery's family holding up through all of this?
Well, it's hard.
Yeah.
It is always difficult. I remember they made the arrest on the evening of the eve of his birthday. His birthday was Friday. They made it on Thursday evening. And I remember the Georgia Bureau of Investigations calling his father to inform him that they were making the arrest. And when we got off the phone with him, Mr. Arbery Sr. said, you know, it's a good birthday gift, but I really rather have my son back. Because in their mind, they're like, he was their youngest child. he was the future for him and Wanda. They had 3 children together, Ahmaud being the youngest. And so every day that goes by, I'm sure they're thinking, Ahmaud was always supposed to bury us. We were never supposed to bury him. And I think many ways they haven't had the time to appropriately grieve. And, you know, you still, whether it's Trayvon parents, whether it's Mike Brown, Terrence Crutch, all these parents, you talk to them and they still refer to their children in the present. Because sometimes they can't divorce themselves of this notion that my child is really gone. They just can't do it.
Dr. Burton.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Attorney Crump. Dr. Burton, I want to go back to something earlier that I mentioned it to Attorney Crump, but I wanted to get your take. Your entertainment culture, those are your hot spots there. How important is it when we do see a LeBron James or Jay-Z rally around? Because Attorney Crump saw that with the Trayvon Martin case as well.
Yeah.
How important is that, Dr. Burton?
It's very important, especially when you think about sports and activism, entertainment and activism. You know, any generation you can choose. You will have, you know, Harry Belafonte, Jay-Z. I mean, a ton of women. You know, particularly in this contemporary generation, just really fighting the good fight. Amanda Seales, people like that. You know, it's important because they have platforms that they can use for any purpose. And they have millions of followers. And, you know, people are called followers on Twitter. You know, for us, we do it because we have to do it for work, right? Those of us who are 50 and above, we do it because we have to do it for work. But for young people, they are called followers because they like to follow people that they admire in a literal sense, right? Virtually, right? And so it's important to have them speak out on this. It's important for them to use their platforms and to say that this is wrong. Tom Brady, writing a letter on behalf of other folks and saying that this is wrong needs to happen. And, you know, I love that we have all of our Black entertainers who are always riding for us, but we also need our non-Black entertainers to ride for us as well. And so you need that kind of participation. So, of course, entertainment and culture is important. The walk that they had, the run with Ahmaud, where everybody's running 2.3 miles in his honor. That's fantastic. But I'm like, can we register 2.3 people to vote? Can each person do that? In Georgia, you can still register to vote up until June 9th, okay, for this next primary election, and then for the presidential election. But, you know, it's very important. It's not different, you know, in terms of the narrative that, oh, athletes and entertainers, they don't have anything to say, choose your own heroes. All of that is good in terms of rhetoric. But the reality is someone will say, oh my God, the king, LeBron James said this, I need to pay attention to this. This person said they vote, I need to go vote. And while you may not need that motivation, I may not need that motivation. There are people out there who need that motivation and need to know what to do. I think we also fail to realize that when you have a certain background, you just assume that everybody knows, right? Everybody knows how to vote. Everybody knows how primaries work. Everybody knows. A lot of people do not know. And so when entertainers and athletes use their platforms for the good of people, it's always helpful. So you know, people say any publicity is good publicity. Not true. But in any publicity about these types of incidents, and someone like King James, who is intelligent and who is paying close attention to these issues, that is important, and that does need to be shared. That information needs to be shared in as many places as possible.
Yeah, and Attorney Crump, you've been fighting for years, civil rights, and you alluded earlier to 2020 being sort of like 1920 in a lot of ways. There was a struggle. The civil rights struggle had its bigger challenges than say others. What's your biggest challenge in the 2020 fight for civil rights?
Well, obviously, it is Crump Jr. now has a PhD. So they have strategies to be able to not appear as being discriminatory. I call it, they employ the intellectual justification of discrimination. they intellectually try to justify it. Now, no matter what the situation is, like when they are direct filing children into adult prisons, they have intellectually justified it. When they keep people of color in prisons during the COVID-19 crisis, because they said, we're going to say low-level criminal offenders can get out, but yet they have all charged Black and brown people with trumped up charges. So you see 41% of white people qualify to get out of prison under bar's definition of compassionate release, where only 7% of Black people get out under the qualifications of compassionate release. And so it's those type of things. You think about Trayvon and you think about Ahmaud, there's such similarity, but you think about this whole stand your ground law, that was a creation of ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange, group. And in that group, they were supposed to be dealing with financial issues, but they came up with a way to deal with all kind of social issues for the NRA and to, allow not the police to kill us and get away with it, but now for any Tom, Dick, or Harry, literally to get away with it. And I digress just for a second to go through some of these similarities between the Trayvon Martin tragedy 8 years ago and Ahmaud Arbery, because it really is astonishing when you think about it. You had both Trayvon and Ahmaud get killed in the month of February. Trayvon February 26, 2012, Ahmaud February 23rd, 2020. And then you had, if both Trayvon and Ahmaud would have been living today, both of them would be 26 years old. And then you have Trayvon accused of burglary by his killer in the gated community in Sanford, Florida. And then you have Ahmaud accused by his killers of some alleged burglary in the Santina Shores community. And in both instances, you have no evidence whatsoever. I'm gonna let Dr. Burden speak for a minute, just because the new prosecutor is calling me, who's been assigned to the case.
Oh, okay, yes. So to pick up where Attorney Crump is going, we have these similarities in these cases. One of the big problems that we're facing is vigilantism. Everybody wants to be a vigilante and wants to be able to shoot and kill people, particularly Black and brown people, under the guise of making a citizen's arrest. We've got to get rid of these laws. Also, I think, Stacy, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Ida B. Wells, who received a posthumous Pulitzer Prize, who was writing about these issues and stalking and lynching of people, over 100 years ago. So, this is not new. This is something that is historic. It is something that is systemic, and we have to figure out how to eradicate it or move it away from our future. And so what Mr. Crump is talking about is we're going to continue seeing these types of cases. Mr. Crump and I first met at a film festival curated by Tyra Lindsay Warren in Dallas with Bishop Jake, where they were looking at films that talked about these types of issues, or documentaries. This documentary was about Jordan Davis. And so and that was probably 7 years ago, 8 years ago or so. I'm not sure. I think I'm getting my time mixed up, but it was years ago, and we're still having these same conversations. We're having these same conversations, and we've got to move away from having the same conversations and actually doing something about it. So those of us in media, Stacy, as you know, we're going to keep up the good fight and keep highlighting these issues. We're going to keep keeping an eye on these laws. We're going to hold and be the watchdogs that we are, the Fourth Amendment. Be the watchdogs that we are supposed to be, the fourth, the unofficial fourth branch of government, but be the watchdogs that we are and hold these people accountable. And conversely, the judicial system has to do the work that they need to do as well. And then the voters, lastly, we have got to become more involved. Georgia has 100 and I think 49 counties. Most of the people who are in elected office here run unopposed. That is a problem. So those of us, particularly Black folks who are in this bubble called Atlanta, which is fantastic and we love it, it's all Black, it's the Mecca, all of that is wonderful. But outside of Atlanta, there are some major issues and challenges and problems and that have to go. So we have a wonderful mayor named Keisha, but we've got to move and work on behalf of folks who are outside of the city too busy to hate. We have to do it. So it has to be collaborative, it has to be a coalition, and we need to make sure that we keep these cases in the forefront so that people are aware of what's happening and can do something to actually create the change that's needed.
Yeah, and as our viewers can tell, you know, things happen. News happens all the time, and Attorney Crump just had to take an important call regarding the case. So as we are live, anything can happen with an attorney, with journalists. So we certainly thank you for tuning in. This is you know, this has been an important discussion. To hear Attorney Crump describe what's been going on down there in Georgia, and certainly to have Dr. Burton give insight is really important, because again, Dr. Burton was one of the very first to have brought the Ahmaud Arbery case to light, and we're certainly grateful for that. We have had some viewers tweet their or post their thank yous to you, Dr. Burton. We certainly thank you as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
We wanted to, Sandy Henry is asking, what about what the parents were told? That was really, I think, a question for Attorney Crump. I don't know if you know the answer to that question, Dr. Burton.
Basically, they were told that there was no crime committed. Sorry, your son is dead. There was no crime committed.
Wow.
The letter where he that they acted within what have you. And so the letter, and if you look online, you can see it. I think I'll link to it even in the story. But he basically says that the McMichaels acted legally. And so there's no crime made. And so they should just get over it and move on with their lives. And luckily for us, they did not.
Yeah, just get over it, huh? Wow.
There was no crime committed. That's what I want people. That's why I wrote the story. I was like, if you can read this story, if you can read just the facts, and the facts were put forth by the police report, by the McMichaels, the police report. They were the ones who made it. Those were the facts. Those are the facts they gave. So if you can take the facts from the police report and look at those facts and think that no crime was committed, then I would encourage you to check for a pulse.
Well, William McNear asks, can we expect an indictment to be handed down? What's the latest? I'm not sure if he's looking for an indictment of the father and son or others. Nsinga, real quick, as we about to wrap up, what's the very latest?
The latest is they've both been arrested. People erroneously thought that the third, the person who videotaped it, who for the life of me, I think I'm just trying to forget these people. I cannot remember his name, but they thought he was had been arrested. As of today, when we got on this call, he had not been arrested. Now people are investigating. The GBI is actually on the case. They have been assigned to the case, and they are investigating the case now. And so that's really where we are. We're trying to see what the GBI is going to find. There could be further arrests coming. You know, without divulging too much, because, you know, we want to be fact-based because we are a press organization. There could be more arrests coming because there's evidence, or there's alleged evidence of a possible cover-up. But all of that will be coming out. And Mr. Crump, you should have him back on because I'm sure he has those details, which is why he's on that call now. And I'm about to jump on one too.
Well, thanks so much, Dr. Burton, for joining us. We thank Attorney Crump. We know that he's had to attend to something extremely important at this moment, but we really appreciate him taking out the time. Again, join us on Wednesday as we talk to, at 1 o'clock Eastern time, we talk to some more publishers of the Black Press of America about even things like this that's going on. So we thank you for joining us. and have a great afternoon, and everybody stay safe.
Thank you, Stacy.